You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
Welcome back to Crimson Cast. Galen, Claudio, Scott Caulfield joining you here. If you didn't listen to our earlier show where we had Jeremy Gray on discussing the arrival of Hoosier the Bison, well, go listen to that immediately and then come back as
the video first. But yeah,
yes, absolutely. Watch the videos, all of them. Watch the supercut, which I'm assuming is going to be submitted to a film festival somewhere soon. It should be. But no, welcome back to Crimson Cast. We are actually not talking IU in this one, so if you're tuning in for the IU content, there'll be other podcasts, but we're covering Indiana-based stuff as we'll be tackling our experiences with the Indy 500 and what happened overall there, and then this insane weekend that the Indiana Pacers had in the Eastern Conference Finals. Scott, good to see you again, although we're still, this is the same recording session that we just got done with. So
we've already done it. We've already done all the small talk, so we can move forward. Yeah.
First, folks, a quick reminder, we are brought to you by Home Field Apparel, your place to go for the finest in college fashions, the softest fabrics, the coolest designs. And, of course, whether you're talking about Pacers or you're talking about the Indy 500 or you're talking about the Bison or Indiana apparel or any one of a number of hundreds of schools out there, Home Field Apparel is the place to go. Use the code HOME23, get 15% off your first order. And even if you've used that, create an account, log in, make purchases. They have an insane point system where you will earn like buku points towards your next order. I've gotten a lot of I could afford because I was like, oh, I've got like $90 worth of points here that I didn't realize that I had already accrued. So be sure to download the app, get them on social media, go and peruse the huge amount of items. They just launched a new set of Purdue hats. And I was thinking as I was driving back from the Pacers game, I saw that ad. I don't think any company has done more to try to make Purdue fans look good in spite of themselves than Home Field Apparel has. Like, it's really been an amazing effort on their part to try to upgrade the looks of those who root for that team.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Purdue's got a good color scheme. It's just the mascot is now we can make fun of mascots. We can make fun of their mascot. Like, bring it on.
We're in the club, man. It's great. Yeah, that's yes. But also, folks, just a reminder, we're on YouTube. Search Back Home Network on YouTube. Get not just Crimson Cast, but also Assembly Call. Dribble Drive just had its 50th episode with the whole McEwen family on, which was a pretty cool get from Austin Render. The Doing the Work podcast, X's and Joe's, the whole roster. We got some new shows that are going to be launching this summer that I think you're going to be excited about, and you're going to want to see them. So go and subscribe to Back Home Network on YouTube. We're trying to hit 8,000 subscribers by the end of June. So tell all your friends, tell everybody, go subscribe on YouTube. It's really become the place to consume Back Home Network. But if you want to stay on Spotify or Apple, we certainly welcome you there as well. Also check out crimsoncast.substack.com. and get all the podcasts delivered right to your door or inbox, I guess, unless your email gets delivered to your door. If that's the case, I want to hear from you and find out how you're getting that to happen. Anyway, let's dive in, Scott. Let's start with the Indy 500 as we're rapidly getting to the point where it's no longer a news story. But one of the weirder races I think I've ever been to or watched. It was one of those races where the outcome was good, and I was happy for Alex Palou, deserving winner. He's been by far the most successful driver this year, and I think you got to give him his flowers. Like he finished so well in the 4 races leading up to this race at the Indy 500 that it felt natural when it happened. But he wins a race where you've got kind of a combination of weather issues that led to a lot of delays, and just racing that really didn't live up to, I think, the standard that Indy has set over the last decade in terms of close races and a lot of passing. And it just kind of felt anticlimactic to some degree, despite the fact that commercially it might have been the most successful 500 in history.
Yeah, I mean, it started off very funky. You're like, this is going to be a weird day. And it turned out, nope, just going to be after we get going, there was a caution on lap 106. And then there wasn't a caution again until lap 200. And those 100 laps, you and I have, this is unfortunately kind of what happens in Indy, is that sometimes the drivers get, they sit on the broadcast, getting settled in. It means they're not doing anything. They don't want to pass. They want to save some fuel. But normally you get some passing in different parts of the field, maybe not for the lead. You would get to a point in this race where once they got strung out, there wasn't passing at all. I mean, it's just everyone was together. And then if there was some pit stops, people would start doing some passing. And the passing that was happening was teammates in the lead just trying to do fuel save. And I'm with you. It started off like, oh, this is going to be crazy. Like, you have the McLaughlin thing, lap 1, you have Marco or McLaughlin lap -1, I guess. Sorry, I'm bouncing around, but you had a very funny tweet where I was with people for the first time and like, my God, have you ever seen somebody do that first lap? Yeah, I have. Like, I saw Guerrero do it. It's like, it's wild when you've been there enough. Like, I've never seen it like that, but I've seen something tangentially similar. I mean, I wasn't there, but you had the 82 race where, Kevin Kogan just goes across and takes out Mario Andretti also on the front stretch. Just so wild starting, but yeah, it kind of, and then even the end, you had the Palou pass was for the lead, but it was on lap 12, but it was behind 2 other cars. And then it just was like, well, nobody can pass anybody. And this is just the way it's going to go. And even the last lap, Ericsson made a bit of a push, but really wasn't going to get close. So, it wasn't awful, but it wasn't, I kind of left being like, man, I didn't really get a thrilling middle or ending.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we got robbed of a couple of possibilities there. Some of it happened before the race even started with the Penske cars being sent to the back. Because, I mean, you talked about this when we previewed it. Newgarden had a rocket ship in this race, and he had worked his way all the way up to 6th. It really looked like he was well on his way to challenging for his 3rd in a row, and then his fuel pump gives out in the pits. And it's like, uh-oh. And it was interesting because, Connor Daly leading and being up in the mix, that was exciting if you were a kind of a racing partisan. It was, that's not like a national name for a lot of people. But every little thing that happened along the way, especially in those last 60 laps or so, felt like it was adding up to something. But I think the most representative thing I saw on the track of how this one just wasn't quite there in the hierarchy of great races that we've seen in the past is you've got 2 cars at the tail end of the lead lap ahead of the pack of 5 or 6 cars that are in serious contention, and the leaders couldn't overtake them. It was very interesting, and I kept waiting. I was like, okay, surely somebody's going to break out and get one or both of these cars or something, and it never really happened. It almost junked up the end of the race. And it's interesting that the only meaningful pass that seemed to happen down the stretch there was Palou passing Ericsson, and Ericsson never really had the juice to get back up and make the similar pass, which maybe points to an aero kit issue, which kind of feels like has been an issue with Indy all year in every race. It's something that they're going to have to get fixed, because I think one of the big arguments in favor of IndyCar has been it's not F1. It's not a parade. It's one where all the cars are they're spec cars. It's really about the little minute adjustments, but you would have a lot of passing, and that just didn't happen in this race.
And this is, Palou's had an awesome season. Like, Palou's having one of the best seasons ever, so he's a very deserved winner. But this also kind of came to my mind as the race was going along. Like, this was just being served to Palou on a platter. When you look at, Penske is the other dominant team, you basically negate 2 of the cars by putting them in the back of the field. The one that's still up there wrecks before the race even starts. Like, McLaughlin's out. Now the 2 Penskes are in the back, and then Power didn't really have it. And then, like you said, Newgarden goes out. The other Ganassi car is Dixon, who just has problems all day. Immediately, his brakes are on fire before the race starts. He's out. So, like, that puts Palou in a great spot. Like, all right, the one driver of the only 2, I don't say good teams, but, really good teams are there. It's like, all right, your pole sitter is Schwartzman. It's a rookie team. Like, he crashes in the pits. Rossi had a good drive, but, his car catches on fire. Like, you start having a lot of good drivers, and it's like, well, they're on lower level teams, and those lower level teams normally have pit issues. Takuma Sato had a rocket ship. He had a pit issue. It's like, if you're the only Ganassi and Penske car in contention, you're going to have a really good shot to win. And that is what happened. It's not taking anything away from Palou, because he's might have the best season of any driver we've ever seen in IndyCar. But it definitely also all came to him this year, where it's like you're competing with Connor Daly and, Marcus Ericsson. It's not quite like doing Penske. I thought O'Ward might have had a shot, because there was a moment there where he started really rocketing up, and then he went from like 5th to 3rd. And I told my wife, like, dude, O'Ward is on a tear. And then it's like, no, he just hit a wall. Like he just hit whatever proverbial air wall they had and could not pass.
Yeah, it was interesting. And then you get to what happened after the race. And you think about the fact that, okay, Ericsson gets past, finishes second. It would have been a fascinating story if Ericsson had won because...
That's my question. If he wins, do they take away his victory?
Well, hold on. Well, I think, it was an interesting historical thing because, like, if he wins, now he's in the 2-winner club.
Yeah.
And what occurs, of course, for those who were paying attention is that essentially all the Andretti cars failed tech inspection because they had some, impermissible parts that had been added after the fact. I think they're protesting that. I'm not sure if they're going to have a chance to win the protest, but I think this is something to keep in mind. And actually, Palou got asked about it after the race, like if it had been found that Ericsson's car had finished tech inspection, should he have been installed as a winner? And Palou's response was, well, if he had like a V8 in his engine, or a V8 engine in his car instead of like the V6, then maybe. But, if it's a minor thing, then no. And this is where, as much as the Penske controversy beforehand was problematic, I think mostly because of Roger Penske's position with the series and the track, these things do happen a lot. Like we've had prior winners whose cars have failed post-race tech inspection. And generally speaking, at that point, you don't pull the win. Right. You just kind of accept that it occurred and you move on. It really does, I think, from a cultural perspective, no group or no set of people had a worse May than the inspection crew for the Indianapolis 500. And it calls into question the rest of the series. Now, cheating or stretching the rules happens in pretty much every series of racing. It's just kind of part of the game. But, I don't think they would have pulled the race win if Ericsson had won. It still would have gotten out. It would have cast a cloud over things. So it ended up being probably for the best that things worked out the way that they did. It's just kind of weird that cloud, which really ended up being there for the entire month of May in one form or another, was in many people's minds the last thing we'll think about with this particular vintage of the race. Yeah,
no, it's true. And back to your comment, the friends I went with who had never been before, I kind of explained this to them, just not wonky, but like that could have happened. Like, now, has that ever happened? I'm like, yeah, actually in 81, there was a winner who they took it away and gave it back to him. So it's like, we've seen all of this before. It's a trouble that IndyCar is running into, where, because it's not the tech inspection, last year it's the snake. The snake didn't come into play this year, or the dragon tail, whatever, the swerving, because you had 2 cars who didn't need to swerve as much. But this is something Racing's got to figure out, because, in the end, most of the fans are not super into the sport. I mean, they're there. It's like, oh, I understand racing, like I understand track and field. Like the person who finishes across the line first wins. And then being like, oh, no, they didn't win because they blocked. And a block is actually technically this, or there's this arrow kit thing. Like, nobody wants to hear that. It's like, if you go to the race for the first time, that was awesome. I saw the yellow car win. That's the winner of the race. So on the one hand, you can't really take away wins and move positions. On the other hand, you need to have some kind of governing body. There's some kind of rules, because it does feel like we're getting into the Wild West, where it's like at the last 2 laps, drivers can kind of do whatever they want. All the blocking rules are off the table. And it feels like now every team is just breaking all the inspection rules. And the question I asked you, it's like, where are the inspectors before the race and before? Because Power's car made it through inspection, and then like, oh, we missed that. And then, it's like, there should almost be like, once you've made it to the grid, we're done inspecting. Like, we did our inspection, and that's it.
Yeah, no, I mean, as much as Penske has upgraded the track experience for fans, I think this is the next big thing that the series has got to tackle. But it's tough because, again, this is not like the NFL. This is a bunch of teams that come together under the banner of, this entity called IndyCar.
It's like college football.
Yeah, it's in many ways, yes. So those are some things to keep in mind. But, overall, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm like hyper negative on the race. I don't think it was entirely the fault of the competitive aspects that the weather didn't cooperate. It went from looking like it was going to be a beautiful day, albeit a bit cloudy, to then, oh, we've got some rain.
It's our fault. It's our fault. We did our preview pod and we were like, the weather looks awesome. Like, put that in stone. And what was annoying is Saturday was fantastic.
Yeah.
Monday was awesome.
Yeah.
Sunday was just not great.
I know it was annoying too, because like last year it rained, like it actually rained. And here we never felt more than sprinkles in turn 3.
Over there in turn 2, it's super wet.
Scott has no idea how it felt because he was in an air-conditioned suite.
Covered. I was not in a suite, but I was covered in the penthouse.
But we can't.
I left my long sleeve shirt at home in the morning. And I'm like, I'll be all right. I'm just like,
yeah,
God, it's cold.
Yeah, it bordered on a little bit of that, but it just, to some degree, it's like you almost wish that it just rained.
Yeah,
and they dried the track, and then you got the full. But it was like it was intermittent up until about lap 100, and it destroyed not just the flow of the racing, but it kind of destroyed the flow of watching the race. And kind of, if you've been to Indy long enough, or if you've watched the race on TV and really paid attention to it, like there's a rhythm to these things. There's a settling in period, and it just never felt like it got there. And so we'll see what happens next year. Obviously, it's not like they're going to cancel the race or anything, but yeah,
I texted you. I'm very curious to see what happens to Team Penske at the end of this year, because they already cleaned house with a lot of their engineers and Tim Cendrick. I text you. I'm like, I think McLaughlin's done. Like, that's just that month of May where you crash out in practice and you crash out before the race starts. That's not something Roger's a huge fan of. He doesn't normally like to run 3 cars. And so I can see a world where it's like, all right, we can go down to 2 cars. And I do wonder if it's just going to be like, we're going to clean house, and Will Power gets wrapped up in that, and it becomes Newgarden and somebody else. Like, I could see a real shakeup where, Team Penske's just like, we're done with all of this. And I do think McLaughlin, unfortunately, he's a good driver, but that was not a great month.
Yeah, I mean, it was a rough one. And I mean, he's a good driver, as you said, and I think he'll land somewhere. I'm not totally sure that your scenario will play out the way that it plays out, but it's very possible. Yeah. And, but it's one of many changes that we'll probably see taking place just in general on everything. Yeah. You and I, following the 500, then proceeded down to Pacers game 3. Yeah. You went home, took a shower, texted me, taunting me about how refreshed you felt.
Was awesome.
Well, I got dropped off in downtown Indy and went and had a piece of pizza and was just like, well, I got a few hours to kill. But game 3 started off great, and then sadly for Pacers fans, not sadly for the Knicks fans in our audience, Pacers kind of forgot how to play basketball in the second half of the game. Knicks did a great job of coming back. Atmosphere started off great, and then it just kind of felt like a bummer at the end of the day. And if you did both, it was like a somewhat unfulfilling race, and for Pacers fans, a really unfulfilling game. But I want to tie in what happened with game 4 last night, which you and I were both at, an electric atmosphere of a tight game. Again, Pacers are up 3-1 in this series, but every game has been close and hotly contested. But we end up getting to witness not just an insane atmosphere with a ton of celebrities, which is, not usual for Gainbridge, but an all-time game, like literally an all-time game from Tyrese Halliburton, one of the best stat lines in the history of the NBA playoffs. Like, people are rightfully gushing about it today. It was quite a 2 days in the Eastern Conference Finals for the Indiana Pacers, and just a really remarkable atmosphere all the way around.
It was, the game 3, I noticed something. It was like middle of the second quarter. Nembhard got a steal in the open court, and then, passed it to Halliburton. They got it. And I have good seats. I'm in the corner, kind of in an angle. And I could see Halliburton look at Nembhard. They kind of had this look of like, we got it. Like, we have the Knicks figured out. And it was at that moment, they almost took their foot off the gas. I also think Nesmith getting hurt really affected things, just kind of threw the balance off. But I noticed that, and then the Knicks started to come back. And, I do think the Pacers are better, but I don't think they're so much better. I think they're very close. So you kind of take your foot off the gas, the Knicks will come back, and that was a bummer in game 3. I say all that because last night, as the Pacers made their runs, I never saw that in any of the players' faces. It just looked like complete resolve. Like, we are locked in. We are focused. We are winning this game. And you felt it all night. Halliburton was way more aggressive. The entire team, Nesmith was just up on Brunson the entire time. And I never saw them let up. And the Knicks were really hard to put away because they're a very good team. But no, that was the main thing I saw was the Pacers just focusing in the whole time. The thing that I noticed with the Knicks is kind of this is the Karl Anthony Towns experience, which is, and I had Knicks fans sitting to me both on game 3 and game 4, and which was annoying, but they all mentioned the same thing. Like, if Towns would just post up every play, we cannot stop him. Like, Turner is not able to guard him. If he gets the ball on the, right at the free throw line and drives in, Turner cannot stop him. Siakam cannot handle him in the post. And, Bradley is just not able to, like, we have no one who can guard Cat in the post. The trouble is Cat will do that for 2 possessions and then suddenly want to play 3-point shooting threes, and he will stop doing that. Like, he's incapable of doing it for the entire game. And that is the Karl Anthony Towns experience, but it must be maddening to be a fan of his. But I see that, and it's like, after he does it twice, like, all right, that sucks, but I know he's going to stop, and I'm happy he does, because that's the one thing the Knicks can do that we seem to not be able to stop.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, you watch this series and, you really get used to how the players play and where things sit. And I mean, what's fascinating to me is I think the Knicks clearly have the more talented starting 5. Yeah. But it's to some degree. I was talking to one of my good friends about this, who's a Knicks fan, last night, and it's like the problem for the Knicks kind of reminds me of the problem the Pacers ran into 12 years ago, where they had a championship caliber team built around a traditional setup of a team, but they ran into teams that LeBron was on that they couldn't overcome because they were built on a new model. And that kind of feels like what the Knicks are running into here. This feels like a Knicks team that was built for winning a title 6 years ago, where you have a dominant superstar scorer in Jalen Brunson who doesn't play that great defensively. You can get him in mismatches. You've got a dominant offensive post player who's got range, can stretch the floor, and Karl Anthony Towns, but also doesn't play defense particularly well. But you can't rely on your complementary pieces consistently to do things. And you'll get good games out of Miles Bridges every now and then. You'll get Mitchell Robinson's had a really good series. Last night was not the best game for him, but it doesn't hold up well against this weirdly constructed but very forward-thinkingly constructed Pacers team. And you think about what killed the Pacers in game 3 was they stopped pushing tempo the moment that they got the game in hand. And then when Nesmith goes out with the injury, they kind of lose the impetus during the times when Halliburton's not on the floor. And Halliburton didn't do a good job of getting the team back into action. Last night, for most of the time that the Pacers were playing well, they were really pushing tempo. They were really forcing New York into disadvantageous defensive positions. And yeah, it really becomes a matter with the Pacers of you have to keep scoring. And that was what they did down the stretch in game 4. It's what they did down the stretch in game 2. You got game 1, you kind of take out of the equation because of how crazy that game was. But the way that this Pacers team works, you get that great game out of Halliburton. You get a great game out of Siakam again yesterday. You didn't get a great game out of Nembhard. Like, he had a really, really bad game all the way around. But it didn't matter because Benedict Mathurin is able to come in, and he had not been good all series. He plays well in that game. It is interesting how, and we've heard like the Ringers talked about this a bunch. Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo have talked about it quite a bit. This idea that the way that the NBA is about to change its structures, with this second apron and everything, puts teams like the Knicks in real trouble, because when you have to overpay or pay a high level for like a trio of superstars, which is how you won over the last 15 years in many cases, you're not going to be able to do that as well. And the Pacers are both weirdly well designed to beat this type of Knicks team while also able to sustain as they move forward, provided they can re-sign Miles Turner, who kind of fits in this quirky system about as well as anybody could.
Yeah. I mean, two other things. Last night, there was a couple of moments where the Knicks really needed a basket. And it's like Landry Shamet was taking the shots. And he hit one, but it's like, I'm like, I love that this series is on Shamet's shoulders. Like, let's go with that. I will take those shots all day long. Like Deuce McBride, who's oddly become unstoppable in the playoffs. But it's like that, at some point, that's going to wear thin. There's that. But there's also, you see it in person. These are all pro athletes, but it's relentless. the Pacers, and you brought it up, they have to score, because when they score, it allows them to set up their defense. But they play the entire court. They play full court defense, and you can tell, like, Brunson is annoyed and he's tired. And it's like, I just want to bring the ball up. Like, I don't want Neesmith up on me the entire time. It's not Neesmith. Like, he'll run around a screen. It's like, boom, there's Nembhard, or like there's Shepard. It's just like, none of these guys can get any space, and you see them getting tired and frustrated. And like Josh Hart is making fouls because they're annoyed. Yeah. And it's not like the Bobby Portis thing where you're like messing with people, you're in someone's face. It's just like, you're playing tough defense. Like, the Pacers are just picking you up, and they have 7 guys who can pick up full court. And you see it wearing the Knicks down. How it goes against the Thunder or the Timberwolves will be a different discussion for a different podcast, but you see them wearing the Knicks down. And yeah, you are right. As you look at the Pacers in the future, I just had their basketball reference page up. Sorry. But you look to the future, if they re-sign Miles Turner, this is a team that needs to be able to say, we're going to go in the tax for a little bit. But this first, second apron stuff is rough. And you have teams like Boston who like cannot, there's repeater taxes being in the second apron twice. But when you look at Siakam is making 45, 48, and 52 the next 3 years. Halliburton's making 45, 48, 52, 55. That's really pretty good, especially when you consider, like, I'm pull up the Knicks contracts. Someone like Towns is making 53, 57, and 61 million over the next 3 years. Those are just huge, huge numbers. And it just becomes really tough to build a team around guys like that.
Well, and I will say, I'm not willing until the Knicks are dead and in the ground to say that the Pacers are advancing, because I think what you've seen in these last 2 games is the Knicks can score with you possession for possession. And the Pacers, what gives them the chances to win also almost prevents them from really building a huge lead and maintaining it. Like, these deep rotations that Carlisle engages in, it worked. I think it's worked once in these playoffs, maybe twice. It was game 4 in the Cavs series. That was a rocket ship. Right. And I forget which game it was in the Bucks series. It might have been game 2. I might be wrong on that, but the rest of the games have been close, or the Pacers have had to come from behind, and they've had the benefit of having a fresher starting 5 that's been on the floor at the end of those games. But it does keep them from really nailing the coffin shut. And I do worry, if the Pacers can't come out with the same mojo that they had in game 4, where they're pressing tempo, they knew early on they were getting a great offensive game from Halliburton, and they were going to get a great offensive game from Siakam. That's the first time in this series that you could really say you got that from both of them in the same game. And the Knicks are great at drawing fouls. The Knicks are great at going on runs, and they've got a scorer that can go basket for basket with Halliburton. And they've got Towns who, if Siakam's on his game, you can go basket for basket with, but it's not a foregone conclusion that that'll happen every time. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a route for the Knicks to come back in this. I still think that I would, 85, 90% would bet on the Pacers just because of how they've been able to control the flow of things when they've wanted to. They just have to want to. They can't let that wane. When you hear Halliburton talking in the postgame about how felt like he let his team down in game 3, really had to push things. It's like, that's true. That's something that you just have to think about every single time. And I think that that's kind of the threshold that Halliburton's got to get through if he's going to really get into the top 10 player argument. He's got to do that every single game because he is the engine that drives literally all of this.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's probably going to be other moments. I mean, it's a feature of this team that they have these 10-minute spans where they just kind of forget. Zach Lowe talks about forgetting the plot. Just they forget the plot of their offense, and you get bad McConnell shots, and it normally is in those spots where the rotation has gotten to a point where it's like Halliburton 4 subs or McConnell and a bunch of subs. It's like, man, can we always have Siakam or Halliburton on the court at all times? And unfortunately, it's like Indiana has, in a good way, but has a bit of the kind of the vibes. Like they get the mojo going, and they're hard to stop. But sometimes when they get bogged down, it's like they also have the bogged down mojo where it's hard for them to get going again. So I hear you. That's my fear, is that you have another 5 or 10 minute kind of just taking your foot off the gas at MSG. You could very easily lose that game. And then, suddenly now the window becomes much tighter and the pressure is really on that game 6, where suddenly, it's like winning 3 in a row sounds tough in theory, but suddenly you're in game 6. It's a tight game. It's like you lose that, you're going back to MSG in game 7, and suddenly everything doesn't matter anymore.
We'll stop talking about the future and talk a little bit more about the game 4 atmosphere as a whole. It was wild, the number of people that were there. I mean, first of all, the number of former Pacers that were in the building for that game.
I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was staggering. I mean, Dale Davis, Antonio Davis, Jermaine O'Neal, Al Harrington, Travis Best was in the building. Darren Collison was in the building. My favorite of all of them, and maybe arguably other than Reggie, the guy that got the most or loudest cheers, Lance Stevenson.
Oh, yeah. And he's been back a couple of times, and he always gets a huge ovation.
Yeah, but I really felt like the way that they spread that out throughout the course of the game, like every time the crowd needed, it felt like a college crowd in a way that most of those games don't.
We stood most of the game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't, because I was up in the cheap seats. Relatively, they weren't actually cheap at all. But we were up and down a bunch, and it was loud. It was engaging. There were a lot of random celebrities, like, you mentioned Jelly Roll was there in the last podcast, but then it was
50 Cent.
50 Cent was there, and
Mellencamp, Triple H.
Yeah, there were the Triple H one. I was like, I don't totally.
McAfee. That was McAfee.
Yeah.
And what's awesome is all the celebrities. Like, first off, you don't mention them because they're Knicks fan, but like Timothy Chalamet was there, Ben Stiller, Spike Lee was all there. But the biggest ovation of anybody was McAfee, who then got up, and if you haven't seen it on Twitter, just does. It's like, on one hand, you should give McAfee the mic because he's great. On the other hand, like, you don't know what you're in for when you give McAfee the mic. I saw a lot of jokes this morning on Twitter and on Reddit. Like, if David Stern was still alive and in charge of the NBA, he would have McAfee would be at like a black site right now. Like, we wouldn't know where he was at. Like, they would have escorted him out of the building in an unmarked tunnel. But it hit just right at that point. Like, it really kind of pumped the audience up at the end there. It was a lot of fun. I give the Pacers game day staff a lot of credit. Like, they set that up for crescendos at exactly the right times. And I give the Pacers credit too. Like, when they needed to get the crowd back into it, they hit shots when they needed to. There were plays that happened despite the officiating, which was on a very particular level of bad for both teams, really. Although the foul disparity and everything, it's like, this is why Pacers fans are constantly saying that the NBA doesn't respect them and they get screwed at every turn when it comes to these sorts of games. It ended up not mattering in this one. But just a wild atmosphere all the way around in the arena. And it's something that I noticed a little bit last year. Not as much, because I went to the game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. But that one was a 3-0 lead, and it kind of felt like a fait accompli that Boston was going to win. But what's cool, and I'm very, I'm hoping we can get to a finals, but what's cool is as you go through the playoffs, the intensity picks up, but just not only the celebrities in the crowd, but you start notice there's more media there. Like ESPN Deportes is there, and they're doing stuff on the sideline. And where there used to just be cheerleaders or pacemates, it's like there's 2 rows right where I sit of new media that's sitting there, and there's suddenly TNT cameras. You feel it's like, oh, this is different. The TNT booth is in the stadium for the halftime show, and from everything I've heard, not been to a finals game, it's like it's that another level when you get to the finals. That suddenly, an hour before the game, it's just tons of people milling around. There's all this media, and it was really cool to see that. It was really cool, and I agree with you. Having been a season ticket holder for the Pacers for 10 plus years now, going to games, they've always done a great job with the in-game experience. And it's an arena that's built just for basketball. I love that, the Garden is great, has like the organ, but, the Pacers do great. They have a drum line up in the top that kind of starts the defense chant, and they use the drums very effectively. It's a very fun place to go watch a game. Yeah, it was good. And it's one of those where I hope the next game we see at Gainbridge is, game 3 of the finals, but we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously the thing about this, and this is where it does somewhat contribute, I think, positively to the Pacers. And frankly, it's like the fact that Nesmith was able to go as long as he went and looked relatively unaffected by the ankle sprain that he suffered in game 3. They got to play again tomorrow. They're playing. I heard Carlisle in the post game saying, like, those what helped us was we didn't have to fly, because sometimes those things, balloon up in the airplane, which I'm like, rent a van. Like the Neesmith drives. Like, sorry, hey, we're taking you a limo to New York. You have to drive. Sorry, buddy.
Put him on a train. Get him out there. I don't know if there's even train service. But hey, do what you need to do. But that was interesting. I hadn't heard that. But no, should be a lot of fun. It's going to be fascinating seeing what happens these next couple of days. I mean, you're gonna. I heard? I forget which podcast it was. It might have been Zach Lowe's podcast about Game 3 of the Timberwolves and Thunder series, where he said, you can't, quoting somebody else, was like, you can't fake desperation.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going to see out of the Knicks in Game 5. That is going to be a desperate team. This is it for them. And the Pacers have managed that. I mean, they managed the atmosphere in Game 1, where it was like there was an uber confidence out of the Knicks, and the Pacers didn't look ready to deal with it. And then they figured out a way to deal with it, and they've played them very even and slightly better up to this point. But I am curious to see how this Pacers team, which is still learning some of the finer points of finishing off games and series, as a collective unit, because they're relatively young, all things considered, at least in terms of like who they rely on as their engine in Halliburton. It's going to be fascinating to see how they deal with that and what the Garden's like, because I will say the one offset to that in the Garden is you've got Knicks fans who are going to get nervous very quickly if things don't go their way right away. I mean, it happened at the end of Game 1 where the atmosphere just kind of went south weirdly there over the last 5 minutes or so. So there's a lot of different factors. I'm fascinated to see what ends up happening.
Well, you hope for what I was saying before Game 5 against Cleveland, which is you just got to keep the game close. You can't let the Knicks get on a heater, get up by 10 or 12. Like you saw it in Game 5 against Cleveland. The Pacers kept it close. You just keep it close to the third quarter. And if it's close, then, all of those Warriors are going to start creeping. The pressure mounts on the Knicks. And then if you can just get up by 3 or 4 points, which is what the Pacers did in the fourth quarter against the Cavs, the Pacers continued to play well. The Cavs self-constructed and just turned into like, all right, Mitchell, save us. And I could see the Knicks doing the exact same thing, where it's just like, Brunson, save us. And he's good. The trouble is, and this is mentioned other places as well, but like when you start playing that hero ball, it's like that's when Mitchell Robinson and other players, they stop going as hard for rebounds and defense, because you start getting disconnected from the game. You saw it with the Cavs where Strus just started missing shots. It's like, then all of a sudden they're down by 6 and they don't have the ball. And it's like, oh my God, we're going to lose in 5 games. And then once that sets in, now you got it. You can just topple the giant. I think that's the path to victory, is just you keep it close, save your dry powder. And then in the fourth quarter, you've got to just get them to a point. The worst case would be if you let the Knicks get to like a 7 or 10 point lead, let them get comfortable and never feel that pressure.
Should be a lot of fun, whatever ends up happening in Game 5. Looking forward to seeing what happens. Scott, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Our Indiana wrap-up of the 500, the double, the Pacers. Let's do some finals talk. If we make it to the finals, we got to do a couple of pods on the finals.
If we make the finals, I'm going to be simultaneously donating plasma and running a bunch of bake sales, see if I can generate enough money to buy a ticket. Man, I looked at those ticket prices yesterday. They're already
finals.
Yeah, well, because season, you can sell the tickets before the matchup is set. I actually did that for ECF Game 3. I bought it before the matchup was set. But yeah, I mean, upper level, like 214, 216 tickets are going for like $850 each right now. So, yeah.
Yeah,
so, if anybody would love a delightful companion to watch the game with, I'm very available. I just want to say that. So
I will end on this, probably way too much information, but I try and, I want my kids to have good experiences. I like to travel with them. I do trips with them. And, I took my son James, and like we went to a road trip to New Orleans to watch a Pacers game there. And I was kind of telling him, like, if we make the finals, a road trip to Oklahoma City is not off the table. Like we can try and I'm kind of like, we can try and do that. And so he's been excited about that. And then in Game 3, he goes to a lot of games. And we're Game 3, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, if we make the finals, we should also do a game where you buy 2 more tickets, and as a family, we can go to a home game." And I'm like, "James, money is not unlimited. Like there does, like I want you to have the world as your oyster, but like there does come a point where I cannot provide everything to you. And if he's like, we can't also do 2 games in Oklahoma City and then come back and buy 4 more tickets for the home play. The finals tickets start to get pricey, my man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to tell
it's
probably not going to happen.
No, this is a different stratosphere that we're talking about.
Unless like someone from Tim Cook from Apple, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to sponsor, we're taking sponsors, $2 million for a 30-second spot on Crimson Cast. Let's go.
That's what you know. What? No, don't worry about. Yes.
Yeah. Use promo code Apple23 for 50% off your next iPhone.
That'll work really well. That's amazing. All right,
we're done.
We'll wrap it up. For Scott, I'm Galen. This is Crimson Cast. It's been a lot of fun talking about everything here the last couple of podcast episodes. Hopefully you're enjoying it as well. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and or Substack. We will catch you folks on the flip side. Stay never daunted. And yes, we brought back the Bison. And you know what, folks? If we can bring back the Bison, we can do anything. Have a good one, folks.